2024. What a year it's been. 9 months, 25 videos, and 12,000 of you got finessed into sticking around. But I've saw and read so much more than I've had a chance to talk about in my videos. And that brings us to this, my 2024 wrap-up. Welcome one and all to the first annual Roadies, my end-of-year awards show of the good, the bad, and the flat-out bizarre of everything I saw, read, and listened to in 2024. We have 11 awards to give out this year, 4 for films, 4 for books, and 1 each for podcasts, YouTube channels, and music. To be clear, this is only things I've consumed in 2024. It doesn't necessarily have to have been released in 2024. The one exception being the category of music. This is going to be limited to first-time watches and reads only, so rewatching my favorite movies, yada yada, not included. Anyways, let's get into it with the most beautiful spectacle of 2024. The nominations are Dune Part 2, directed by Denis Villeneuve. Akira, directed by Katsuhiro Otomo. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, directed by Joaquim dos Santos, Kemp Powers, and Justin K. Thompson. The Fountain, directed by Darren Aronofsky. And The Boy and the Heron, directed by Hayao Miyazaki. Now, all these films are drop-dead gorgeous, from the classics of Japanese animation to modern achievements, from the stylized cinematography of The Fountain to the bold vision of Denis Villeneuve's Dune Part 2. But although all deserve their praise, there's no real question on the winner for me. I know that Miyazaki has said he's retiring about 1,000 times, but this really felt like a send-off. And a flex, my goodness. Just look at that animation. I can't even begin to unpack the themes in the story because I was just really in awe of the spectacle. I'm trying to decide where I would put this in my Miyazaki rankings. I can't really say that it would go number 2 quite yet because I've only seen it once, but it's definitely in the top 4, behind Spirited Away, by the way. Every time I watch a Miyazaki film and I'm like, damn, that might be his best one, I go back and watch Spirited Away and it's like, okay, yeah. You know, sometimes the best answer is the most obvious answer. You can definitely expect more Miyazaki in the very near future. I think I'm deciding between this, Princess Mononoke, and Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. So let me know in the comments which of those you'd like to see me break down. And now, the runner-up. I have some mixed feelings about Dune. On the one hand, Denis Villeneuve is one of my favorite directors, and visually, this was an incredible achievement. However, I had some issues with how they flat-out erased any reference to Islam or Arabic, which were indispensable aspects of the original novel. It's ironic, too, because several people of color were included in both the Fremen tribes and the Imperium, but no Arabs. It goes to show the contradictions in Hollywood's wanting to show greater diversity while still holding deep-seated Islamophobia. Because of this and changing words like jihad, the final sanitized product just didn't work as a critique of imperialism, which Frank Herbert's original novel does brilliantly, though with some flaws. So that aspect was disappointing. I'll link a few articles below in case you want to read more about this. I find it quite interesting. I also thought that the writing and acting in the film were weak points. In my opinion, they casted for star power over picking somebody better suited to the role in a few cases. Looking at you, Jason Momoa and Zendaya. Yeah, I said it. Don't come for me. I don't think she was right for the role. But that's just one little soy boy's opinion, so... But honestly, despite all these issues, I still did really like the film. Because I already know the story, seeing the sandworms and the ornithopters and the events of the book come to life on the big screen was one of my favorite movie memories of 2024. Next up. nominations are Chromacopia by Tyler the Creator, Sable by Bon Iver, Alligator Bites Never Heal by Doechii, In Waves, Jamie XX, Brat by Charlie XCX, Glimmer of God by Gene Dawson, Two Star and the Dream Police by Mick Gee. I don't really know how to say that. While I've not been as tapped into the music scene as I usually am, I did find the albums that I had time for particularly rewarding. From up-and-coming MCs like Doechii, to the return of electronic icon Jamie XX, to the Brat Summer of Charlie XCX, to new discoveries like Mick Gee and Gene Dawson. It was a fun-ass year of music. But without a doubt, the winner of this category is... Bon Iver has always been a musical experience that transcends analysis. His lyrics are cryptic, raw, filled with symbolism I'll never fully understand. Lush soundscapes wash the listener in a sea of feeling, emotion, depth, and humanity. His voice, to me, is more powerful than the words it speaks, because language is insufficient for the intensity of what he wants to convey. But his latest EP, Sable, is much more direct. It hits hard and cuts deep, much like other Bon Iver work, but it's not quite as enigmatic. It tells a story of change. Sable was released on October 18, 2024, a time that I desperately needed it. I was in a new continent, surrounded by people whose language I did not speak, unaccustomed to their culture, unsure how to exist at even the most basic level. On top of this, it seemed like everything was going wrong. The details aren't really important, though if you're interested, you can read my Substack post on it. What is important is that I felt suffocated by the weight of change. As Bon Iver says on Speyside, "Nothing's really happened like I thought it would." It's a simple line, but it made me feel so seen and comforted in those moments of turbulence. Sable is about acceptance of change, and as we move into 2025, change is something that will touch us all. Accepting it is easier to say than to practice, but if ever the weight of change feels like too much, I'd encourage you to listen to these 3 tracks. They might make you feel a little less alone. And the runner-up. Sable definitely moved me the most of anything I listened to this year, but I also have to give some props to Tyler, who has been pumping out fantastic work with remarkable consistency for years now. This album really feels like the culmination of everything he's been experimenting with in his earlier works. His use of features, his honesty and realness, the attention to detail in his composition and production. It's too early to say for certain, but I think Chromacopia is his best, most complete, most confident project to date. Definitely it feels like the one I will be coming back to the most. If you want to hear some more stuff that I've been bumping this year, I've got a Spotify playlist that I put together with some of my favorite tracks. I'll link that in the description. Next category. The one that changed my life. The nominations are Vida Contemplativa by Byung-Chul Han, Dao De Jing by Lao Tzu, Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, and Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. I maintain that every book changes your life in one way or another, but some obviously have an immensely profound impact. This year, I can point to several. But before we get into the winners, I want to give a shout out to Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Real ones may know this, but this was actually my first video on the channel. Technically, I had one before on Portrait of a Lady on Fire, but that was just me learning Premiere Pro, essentially. Frankenstein is really the one that I put my all into. And look, did it turn out as well as some of my recent videos? Not so much. Really, it's a testament to how quickly you can improve your craft if you're motivated. Making videos is not complex. And although I have some moments of great editing, the vast majority of my edits are economical and utilitarian, useful only in support of the writing, I think. I had to throw Frankenstein in here as life-changing because it was essentially the impetus of this channel, which has definitely been life-changing. It's also a great book, but it's not the winner. That honor goes to... Now, don't let the snappy 100 pages fool you. This book is packed to the brim with original ideas. If you've been watching the channel, you've definitely heard me reference them. Byung-Chul Han draws from his vast pool of influences, including Arendt, Heidegger, Nietzsche, Proust, Deleuze, Rilke, and many more, to construct an argument that is both radically simple and undeniably original. He has a way of incisively cutting to the core of the problems created by technology, consumption, and the compulsion towards communication in our active and performance-driven society. With this volume, he encourages us to reject these compulsions in favor of contemplative inactivity, which is not a weakness or a defect, but rather an intensity. Reading this book changed the way I see life, learning, and purpose. It furthered my belief in slowing down to think, to breathe, to give my ideas space to flourish, and it's yielded dividends beyond comprehension. Quote, "Only in inactivity do we become aware of the ground on which we rest, and of the space in which we are. Life enters the contemplative mode, and swings back to its secret foundation in being. It finds itself and looks at itself. It reaches deep immanence. Only inactivity initiates us to the secret of life." And the runner-up? I read this for the first time last year, and while it changed the way I see the world, it also begs for a reread. And that's what I'll be doing starting January 1st on my Substack. Hope to see you all there. Now, if you've identified with the themes of my videos, such as non-action, harmony with nature, and simplicity, then I'm sure you will also love the Tao Te Ching. I have some hesitations with certain aspects of the Tao Te Ching, things I want to further unpack when I get to them, because it's all too possible that I misinterpreted them. You can read a little bit about my skepticism in my first blog post, which is rooted in my disillusionment with religion by way of Catholicism. So definitely some baggage there. Ultimately, though, the wisdom within these pages is profound, and I want to dig into it more than I have with my single reading. Moving on to the best podcast. We have Dissect, track-by-track breakdowns of great albums, typically hip-hop. The Dig, detailed political analysis with class-centric economic and historical context. Philosophize This. Dude talks about philosophy. The New Books Network, interviews with academics and authors of all sorts. And Philosophy Archive, which posts lectures and talks from various philosophers. Very cool stuff. But the winner is... If we're speaking of influences on the channel, Philosophize This definitely has to be mentioned. I started this channel with no real plan other than wanting to talk about books and films, but it was once I integrated the philosophical angle that I really started to find my voice and pick up steam. Philosophize This is a simple show. It's pretty much just a dude talking into a mic about philosophy for 30 to 45 minutes each episode. But what it lacks in structural complexity, it makes up for in perspective. What makes this podcast so special is the host, Stephen West's talent for breaking down incredibly complex and sometimes ancient concepts in ways that relate to our modern world. And the runner-up goes to... I only got into The Dig per my friend Timmy's recommendation in the past few months, but already it's had quite an impact. For anyone looking to get perspective on current affairs, not tainted by mainstream media propaganda, I would definitely recommend it. Particularly their episodes on the Israeli genocide of Palestinians and broader Middle Eastern history have been essential for me in coming to a more truthful understanding of the history, and especially how we as Americans and really the rest of the world have been lied to. Next category. The most what the fuck. I'll explain. But first, the nominations. Trainspotting, directed by Danny Boyle. Mother, directed by Darren Aronofsky. Suspiria, 2018, directed by Luca Guadagnino, maybe? Titane, directed by Julia Ducournau. I should really look up how to pronounce these names. Whatever. And Saltburn, directed by Emerald Fennell. This is a unique category because it can be applied derogatorily, as is the case for Mother, Titane, and Saltburn, but it can also apply to films that I loved, Trainspotting and Suspiria. Basically, these are just films that made me say, "What the fuck? What the fuck?" at one point or another for whatever reason. And the winner is going to be... Look, I'm a big fan of horror, and I can take a lot of things that might make one queasy. I mean, just wait until you see my best picture picks. But, wow, I gotta say, I was quite shocked with some of the choices that Aronofsky made with this, and I'm a big fan of his other work. I understand what he was getting at with what Lawrence's character represents, and why she was treated how she was, but to me, it just came off as gross and artless. I can't think of a film that I've had such a negative, visceral reaction to in quite a while. I said on Instagram that it felt like a bad mushroom trip, and that's really the best way that I can describe it. I will say, though, some people do love this film, so feel free to watch it and make your own judgments. I will just say, proceed with caution, especially if you're a woman. And the runner-up is... I, for the life of me, cannot figure out what the fuck this film is about. The plot makes no sense whatsoever, at least to me, and while it does look amazing stylistically, I can't get over how fucking stupid it was. I mean, maybe I'm missing something, please help me out if I am, but from what I can tell, and minor spoilers ahead, girl is upset with her home life for reasons that are never explained, decides to fuck a car and becomes pregnant, murders a bunch of people, again for no reason that's explained, runs away from home and pretends to be a boy, and simply because she was a boy, the police figure that it must be the son of a fireman whose son went missing. Again, no explanation given. Then, even though this is obviously a girl and obviously not his son, he takes her in out of denial or something. I'll stop there for the sake of major spoilers, but yeah, if you want to talk about a film with a convoluted plot, this has got to take the cake. Which is a shame because I really liked her other film, Raw. Equally weird, but actually impactful and meaningful. Before we go on to the next category, I just gotta say one more thing. Fuck Saltburn. Okay, the next category, Best Piece of Literature. And the nominations, Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky, Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, The Sympathizer by Viet Thanh Nguyen, and Thus Spoke Zarathustra by Friedrich Nietzsche. I read a ton of great books this year, but these 5, at least for fiction, stand above the crowd. I think I have a video on 4 out of the 5 of these, so hint hint at what's coming down the pipe soon. But the winner of this category is actually a pretty easy pick, and that honor goes to... One character I didn't really get a chance to talk about in my 2-part Crime and Punishment video is Razumikin, which is a shame because I think he's probably the closest to Dostoevsky's personal philosophy. Unlike Raskolnikov, Razumikin uses critical thought to really consider his beliefs, flaws and all. He relies on intuition to arrive at conclusions, but is not above hearing other sides to a given issue. Razumikin saw the danger in herd mentality, in buying into ideology or philosophy without critical thought, a lesson that's all too important in this day and age. Quote, "With regard to science, development, thought, invention, ideals, aspirations, liberalism, experience, and everything. We are all, without exception, still sitting in the first grade. We like getting by on other people's reason. We've acquired a taste for it. Further, he detests the idea that another must be agreeable in all the same principles as oneself, saying, quote, "Oh, these peevish ones, principles. You've all got principles in you like springs. You don't dare to turn around by your own will. No, in my opinion, if he's a good man, there's a principle for you. And I don't want to know any more." I love this quote because it speaks to a universal truth that people, myself included, often get hung up on one or a few details about a person, something they don't see eye to eye on, rather than simply seeing the good heart within them. Moreover, Razumikin criticizes the performative nature of thought, the necessity to think in the right way, the inability to disagree with this right way, for fear of being ostracized. People have principles like springs, willing to flex and bend in order to conform to what society or the internet or other people tell them is the right opinion. Fun fact, Razumikin's name, in fact, comes from the Russian word for reason. And the runner-up. Though I can recognize that Crime and Punishment is a better piece of literature, Siddhartha definitely affected me more profoundly when I read it earlier. You might have picked up on that if you saw the video that came out recently. Siddhartha, I believe, can speak to you wherever you are in life. Especially those of you who, like Siddhartha, must go through a lot of changes, must wear all sorts of robes. It's a book about the power of non-action, of letting things happen as they may, and being a receptacle for whatever lessons they may teach you. Siddhartha experiences suffering, as do we all, but as Hess tells his life story, he looks back on his suffering with perspective and even gratitude for it. If you want to see a full list of every book that I read in 2025 ranked, I'll link that Substack post down below. Okay, next category. Best Picture. The nominations are Psycho, directed by Alfred Hitchcock. The Fountain, directed by Darren Aronofsky. Perfect Blue, directed by Satoshi Kon. 12 Monkeys, directed by Terry Gilliam. Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, directed by Hayao Miyazaki. Videodrome, directed by David Cronenberg. The Boy and the Heron, directed by Hayao Miyazaki. This was definitely the toughest category to narrow down, not only because I saw a ton of great movies, but several of them demand a rewatch, essentially, to fully comprehend them. Looking at you, David Lynch. But the winner of this category, and this list may change after a second viewing, so don't hold me to it, but the winner is... I found The Fountain to be an incredibly beautiful way of exploring the acceptance of a dying loved one. Some have seemed to find the plot convoluted, but I was able to follow it just fine, and I think if you take away what was supposedly convoluted, you're really diluting the film, because everything connects and makes sense together. The Fountain interweaves elements of Mayan mythology into its story, which actually sparked some ideas for the novel that I'm working on, which is inspired by Hawaiian mythology. And the runner-up. This is probably a bit of recency bias since I just saw this in the past few weeks. It was also my first Cronenberg film. So definitely will be checking out the rest of his weird and wacky films in the coming year. I thought it was tremendous, and although the whole television thing is outdated, if you replace television with, say, social media, it is just as relevant today. It really speaks to our over-reliance on technology without really thinking critically about what it is doing to our minds. Okay, next up. The one that engrossed me. The nominations are Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky, A Clash of Kings by George R.R. Martin, The Sympathizer by Viet Thanh Nguyen, and The Metamorphosis and Other Stories by Franz Kafka. A lot of books that I read this year were not particularly easy reads. With philosophy and classics, you really have to slow down to appreciate the ideas. So here I want to discuss some books that felt like a breeze. Crime and Punishment is an interesting cross between these two ideals because I did really breeze through it on my first read, but when I was writing the script, I essentially had to go back and read it a second time to pick up on all the things that sort of flew by. By and large, though, the inclusions in this list do have a lot to say. They were a nice change of pace because of their accessibility. And the winner is going to be... If we're talking about pure engagement, the book that I couldn't put down, it's gotta be Brave New World. Written in the 1920s, the world that Huxley elucidates is eerily prescient with how we interact with technology today. I'm working on a full-length video about this book, but here's a little preview of what I got so far. It's a world where everything is easy, where insurmountable obstacles need not be overcome, where desire sits within arm's reach of fulfillment, where obedience is drilled by, quote, brain and buttocks, never with the fists. It's a world where everyone is happy all the time, where solitude is abnormal and thinking is alien, where consumption is king, but waste is unseen, where people are pacified by pleasure, conditioned to conform. And if ever unpleasant emotions arise, there is always soma, the miracle drug that fills its users with empty serenity and raises, quote, a quite impenetrable wall between the actual universe and their minds. Soma, to me, serves as a metaphor for technology and how we use it to pacify our unpleasant emotions. Feeling down? Throw a comedy on TV. Overwhelmed? Instagram Reels. Existential crisis? Drown yourself with Reddit. By allowing Soma, or technology, to dominate our consciousness, we may be escaping life's burdens, but we're also escaping life's beauty, its passion, its equanimity, its chaotic splendor. As John the Savage says, quote, I don't want comfort, I want God, I want poetry, I want real danger, I want freedom, I want goodness, I want sin. And the runner-up? Every time I consider the argument that A Song of Ice and Fire is not worth reading because George R.R. Martin will never finish the series, I feel conflicted. On the one hand, yes, it's going to be frustrating to finish 5 or 6 books with no resolution. But on the other hand, these stories stand alone in their beauty and complexity. I look at quotes like, "He who hurries through life hurries to his grave," and think it would be a disservice to myself to deprive myself of this writing. The A Song of Ice and Fire series is full of these meditations on power, mortality, and politics, of philosophical endeavors into the nature of evil, the value of family, of duty, of loyalty. The richness of the world building is a feat in unfettered creativity, and I feel like I want to finish the series if only to be able to browse the A Song of Ice and Fire wiki without fearing spoilers, which has happened already. Next category. The best YouTuber. Of course, no 2024 wrap-up would be complete without discussing some of my favorite fellow creators. And the beauty of all of these that I'm listing is they all scratch a slightly different itch for me. I appreciate Horses for its visual style and philosophical musings, Thomas Flight for his knowledge of cinematography, Big Nate for the welcoming and intellectual vibe of his book discussions, Jared Henderson for his no-frills discussion of philosophy, Every Frame a Painting for its editing prowess, Girl on Film for her unique takes on films I might not otherwise know about, Great Art Explained for its analysis of visual art, Broe Deschanel for her insightful breakdowns, Jackson's Music Palette for his A1 music essays, Ciano for fun tangents on the intersection of art and politics. Go check him out, he's a homie. Hasanabi for slightly unhinged leftist political commentary, and Channel 5 for its view into the wacky human psyche. And the winner is... If I had to pick one channel that inspired me the most this year, I think it would be Horses. The channel has a very unique artistic style, which I honestly don't know how he pulls off. Like, where does he get these clips from? The topics of his videos are wide-ranging, but often integrate philosophy and storytelling, much like mine. I actually tried to mimic his style somewhat in my Siddhartha video, so if you liked that, or even if you didn't because he does it better, would recommend checking him out. You'll probably notice some influence on not just that video, but some of my other videos. And the runner-up? Every frame a painting is a testament to simple, effective editing. Finding this channel was a treat because it made me realize that I don't need to get very fancy with effects or transitions to create engaging content. I think I learned more about efficiency and instinct from his videos than from any others. Next category. The biggest mindfuck. The nominations are Paprika, directed by Satoshi Kon; Perfect Blue, directed by Satoshi Kon; Psycho, directed by Alfred Hitchcock; The Fountain, directed by Darren Aronofsky; Mulholland Drive, directed by David Lynch; and Videodrome, directed by David Cronenberg. All these films are gonna mess up your mind in one way or another, and as somebody who likes to have his brain shaken up like a snow globe, I tend to seek them out. But the winner of this category stands above the crowd, and that is... Yeah, the two Satoshi Kon movies I saw this year were batshit insane, in a good way, to be clear. As I understand it, this is par for the course for him. I wasn't really sure which one to pick, as Paprika is probably the more complex, but I think I'm going to go with Perfect Blue, which I consider to be the better film, as of now. The reason I'm awarding this the biggest mindfuck is that I still don't fully understand it. The other picks, The Fountain, Videodrome, Psycho, I pretty much followed these the whole time. This one definitely demands a rewatch in 2025 in a more prepared state of mind. And the runner-up? Mulholland Drive is pretty surreal, and it definitely made very little sense until after the film when I put together what had actually happened. I won't discuss that for the sake of spoilers. The first half of the film had sort of an uncanny valley feeling, and I was beginning to wonder about some of the choices by David Lynch, and how Naomi Watts played her role. But as anyone who's seen the film knows, there's a reason for it. I shouldn't have doubted you, David Lynch. As for what Lynch is actually saying with this film, I think I still need to parse that out. One of my friends on Letterboxd called it aestheticized nihilism, and I see what he means, but I'm not really sure if I'm buying it. I think there's something more. Definitely another one that I think I need to rewatch in order to get into the themes and messages, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing, by the way. Susan Sontag has an essay called On Interpretation about how we can sometimes overanalyze art and like look for the meaning and the themes and whatnot, and that was very top of mind for me with these two films. At a certain point, it's okay to just enjoy the form and the art and immerse yourself in the story and worry about all that other stuff later. Okay, the final category. The authors I want to read more of. So I'm going to use this section to discuss what I'm looking forward to reading more of next year, and I'm not going to make the mistake of listing specific books because I'm very much a spur of the moment kind of reader. So instead, I'm going to just give some kind of general categories and vibes. First off, I read a lot of classics and philosophy last year, and it was great, really. However, I think after the third or fourth sexist tangent from Nietzsche, I started thinking I might want to diversify my perspectives. Specifically, I'm looking to get into feminist philosophy. I read a little bit of bell hooks last year and really enjoyed it, but I know there's a ton more out there, so if you have got any recommendations, drop them in the comments. Mainly, though, I just want to read more women and people of color because I definitely did not do that last year. I think the main reason for this is I've just found the writing in older books to be a lot better. And that's probably just because it's been filtered, the cream of the crop has stood the test of time, so to speak. And contemporary books, there's just a lot of noise, a lot of shit, to be frank. That certainly doesn't apply to all contemporary writers. But there's also, I think, a happy middle ground where, you could get into authors like Toni Morrison or James Baldwin or Arundhati Roy, even Le Guin, who's my favorite author, and get some of that other diversified perspective while not sacrificing the writing. So that's really what I'm looking for in the coming year. And then the second category is history and politics, and more specifically, I want to learn about anarchist philosophy. I did a little bit of research for my Dispossessed video, but there's a sort of a dizzying amount of different varieties of anarchism out there. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions of what anarchism is. I think what really speaks to me is the community building and the solidarity. I actually just started Emma Baldwin's My Disillusionment in Russia, and it's great so far. Finally, there's just several other authors that I really want to read more of because I find their writing fantastic. Dostoevsky obviously has to be mentioned. Tolstoy, Le Guin, Chomsky, Morrison, Baldwin, Atwood, Orwell, Camus. So basically, what I'm trying to say here is if you are hearing my taste and have similar taste, I would love to hear what you recommend in the comments. So I hope you enjoyed this 2024 wrap-up. Before I end the video, I just want to say thank you so much to everybody who's subscribed or commented or liked, shared. You've really been instrumental in growing this channel. I can't believe there's 12,000 of you. That's crazy to me. I remember feeling some anxiety sharing my life and putting my personal vulnerabilities on blast for all to see on the internet way back in the early days of my channel. And I talked to the phone at one point with my friend Christian, who has a YouTube channel. Go show him some love. And what I decided was if my videos and by extension my channel could help one person feel a little bit less alone or help them break their bad habits, then this channel would be a success. Well, the comments that I've received on my videos have been proof that this goal has been achieved. I've immensely enjoyed this process of learning and growing as a creator and an analyst, and I hope that my videos continue to bring you some inkling of joy in this fucked up world. So for the last time of 2024, peace and love, 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 and I'll see you next time. 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 And I'll see you in 2025.